Fikoski. I'm a project manager for South Florida Water Management District, and one of my projects is coordination of the Charlotte Harbor Flatwood Initiative. At the 2017 Watershed Summit, Roger Kopp of WSA and Kason Pope of the Fish and Wildlife Commission presented on ecosystem restoration at Babcock Webb Wildlife Management Area. And I'm going to give you more of an overview of the Charlotte Harbor Flatwood Initiative, the Collaborative Regional Hydrological Restoration Project, and discuss our newly kicked off Lower Charlotte Harbor Flatwoods Restoration Planning Project. Next slide. The Charlotte Harbor Flatwood Initiative area is south of Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte and north of North Fort Myers in the city of Cape Coral. Major roadways you can see are I-75, US 41, Burnt Store Road, as well as a rail line that's on the west side of I-75. The area encompasses the 65,000 plus acre Babcock Webb Fish and Wildlife Commission Wildlife Management Area just east of I-75, which is the headwaters to the area watersheds and includes the Bond Farm property, which I'll talk a little bit more about. It also encompasses the 20,000 acre plus Yucca Pens Wildlife Management Area, which is west of US 41, DEP's Charlotte Harbor Preserve State Park, which is along the west coast, Lee County's Prairie Pines Preserve, which is the blue property, southerly property, and that's where the current Babcock Webb flows discharge downstream to. It also includes private lands, including in the center, the Southwest Aggregate Mine, the Charlotte County and SLD landfills, which are both west of US 41, and numerous residential communities such as McNew Ranch. The Charlotte Harbor and Matlacha Aquatic Preserve are the western boundary, and the Caloosahatchee River is to the south. It also encompasses the man-made City of Cape Coral Gator Slough at the southern boundary, and the Charlotte County Fish and Wildlife Commission Zimmel Canal, which is in the northern portion of the Charlotte Harbor Flatwoods area. The Charlotte Harbor Flatwood area is in both Lee and Charlotte County, both South Florida and Southwest Florida Water Management District boundaries. So you can see the need for a collaborative effort for restoration. Next slide. In the 1950s, almost all of the watershed in the South Charlotte County and North Lee County and the Babcock Webb Wildlife Management Area were drained by sheet flow in a southwesterly to southerly direction. Decades of development, including roads, farms, mining, residential lands, railroads, man-made canals, have all resulted in significant hydrological alterations and flooding issues, such as the reduced hydrological connections and the redirection of Babcock Webb sheet flow. Flows are now north via to Zimmel Canal, Alligator Creek, Myrtle Slough, to the east towards Highway 31 and Babcock Ranch, and to the south and southwest via Gator Slough and Powell Creek. This redirection of flows has resulted in abnormally high water levels and longer hydro periods in the Babcock Webb Wildlife Management Area, and lower water depths and shorter hydro periods on the Yucca Pens unit, degrading the natural habitats of both these wildlife management areas, as well as impacting the quantity, quality, and timing of flows to Charlotte Harbor, Matlacha Pass Aquatic Preserve, and the Caloosahatchee River. Next slide. While you can't see detail in these 1953 and 2017 desktop hydrological maps of the Charlotte Harbor Flatwood area, I wanted to show you the extreme difference in water levels from 1953 to 2017. The blue indicates water levels up to 2.5 feet, and the green indicates uplands. So you see a vast change from 53 to 2017 in the project area. Next slide. There have been numerous studies conducted by local and state governmental agencies that have resulted in conceptual plans to restore the hydrology where feasible. Next slide. And meanwhile, there's been several regional and statewide plans that support the need for hydrological restoration in the Charlotte Harbor Flatwood Initiative area. The initiative partners are hopeful that Governor DeSantis's Executive Order 1912 will result in additional 2020 legislative restoration funding opportunities for non-SERP projects such as the Charlotte Harbor Flatwood Initiative. Next slide. The primary goal of the initiative is to restore the hydrologic connections for enhanced wetland hydroperiods in Babcock Webb and Yucca Pens wildlife management areas. We want to increase regional wet season water storage that's been lost over the decades, to decrease excessive wet season discharges and increase dry season freshwater flows to the tidal creeks of Charlotte Harbor, to Gator Slough, which discharges to Matlacha Pass Aquatic Preserve, and to the freshwater creeks of the Caloosahatchee Estuary. We also want to reduce wet season flooding, particularly in the North Fort Myers area. And in doing that, enhance fish and wildlife habitat, as well as community resilience, and to restore and revitalize our local economy that's dependent on healthy landscapes and waterways. Next slide. These are the historic flow paths needed. The Fish and Wildlife Commission is acquiring permits for the future phase 1 of a Bond Farm hydrological enhancement impoundment. And Bond Farm is the 700-acre green parcel just east of I-75, just west of the Yellow Stolly Ranch. The goal of phase 1 of the Bond Farm is to store Babcock Webb's wet season water to reduce the abnormally high water levels that are stacked on southern Babcock Webb, as well as the peak wet season discharges to Matlacha Aquatic Preserve and the Caloosahatchee River. During the dry season, Bond Farm will pulse the water to the south to increase base flows to more historic levels. We need a conveyance easement or acquisition for the Bond Farm impoundment to do the phase 2 western conveyance discharge structure. Then Bond Farm in wet season water that's stored will be moved west under I-75 through ditches on either McNew Ranch or Southwest aggregates in the center of the center of the map, and under US 41 and through open lands, either SLD or potentially Charlotte 580, to enhance the Yucca Pens hydropatterns to more historic flows and levels. Southwest Aggregate Mine may be an opportunity to store additional Babcock Webb excess water. And in addition, we hope to acquire Stolly Ranch in the Yellow with Florida Forever and a Lee County Conservation 2020 program partnership to store additional excess Babcock Webb waters during the wet season for potential conveyance to the Caloosahatchee during the dry season to improve salinity levels in the river. Next slide. This slide with LiDAR overlay with the red and oranges being around 24 to 28 elevation and down to the blue elevations of 16 illustrates the gradient from Babcock Webb Bond Farm to the Yucca Pens for that westerly sheet flow. Next slide. Multiple local, state, and federal agencies, NGOs, private landowners, and consultants are partners working on the initiative. And as I stated earlier, since the project area covers Lee and Charlotte counties, South Florida and Southwest Florida Water Management District boundaries, stakeholders working collaboratively is essential to accomplish cost-effective regional hydrological restoration projects. Next slide. I won't go over this in the next slide in detail, but I wanted them in the presentation, which will be available on the CHNEP Water Atlas Charlotte Harbor Flatwood Initiative website for your perusal if interested. Next slide. The initiative has been gathering data over the past decade, and some of the on-ground restoration projects completed include the Lee County and Fish and Wildlife Commission Yucca Pens ATV Trail ditch blocks restoration to enhance the Yucca Pen hydropatterns. Next slide. As we all know, restoration will take decades, but our next major steps are the Lower Charlotte Harbor Flatwood Restoration Planning Project, which I'll talk about more in detail in a couple of slides. Completing the permitting of the Bond Farm hydrological enhancement and pursue funding for its construction. To pursue the Stolly Ranch and the Charlotte 580 for with acquisition potentially through Florida Forever funding and matching grant funding. Those are needed for getting additional waters to the Yucca Pens as well as Caloosahatchee River. Also, we'd look at partnering with FDOT on their Burnt Store Road widening PD&E study to explore potential opportunities for win-win projects. We also are looking at the design of the Bond Farm Southwestern Discharge, but we need the modeling from the Lower Charlotte Harbor Flatwoods Restoration Planning Project that I'll talk more about, as well as those conveyances, Western conveyances, and of course funding. Next slide. In 2018, the Water Management District submitted the Lower Charlotte Harbor Flatwoods Hydrological Restoration Planning proposal to DEP, who administers the BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill funding, and in early 2020, we received the funding. CHNEP is administering the planning effort, and the project kickoff was April 2020 to be completed by mid-2022. Water Science Associates, WSA, is the consultant. And again, I'll provide more details on the tasks of this current and extremely important planning project for the initiative. Next slide. The first step is to gather existing data. The Charlotte Harbor Flatwood data is currently in various locations. So this project will obtain prior monitoring data, modeling files, hydrogeologic data, and previous studies of the project area, and then identify data gaps and work to fill in those gaps. All of the information will be located on the CHNEP Water Atlas Charlotte Harbor Flatwoods Initiative webpage for public use. Next slide. The groundwater monitoring and flow monitoring plans have been completed for the project, and 23 of the 24 monitoring wells, 8 data loggers, 3 rain gauges, and 8 flow gauges, 7 of them freshwater gauges and 1 tidal gauge, have been installed to fill in the gaps. Next slide. All existing and new monitoring wells, rain gauges, and flow gauges are located on this aerial. We've labeled the new wells and the new data loggers, and if you look along the western boundary, the green circles, you'll see the Tidal Creek, the flow gauges. Next slide. Data will be downloaded quarterly from August 2020 through November 2021, and the flow gauge monitoring will begin in the 2020 wet season, and flow rating curves will be established by comparing the captured water levels and velocity from 10 monitoring events per freshwater station across a wide range of flows and depth conditions using the UVM, the ultrasonic velocity meter shown on this slide. The tidal station will have flow measurements for both outgoing and incoming tidal conditions with a minimum of 8 measurements. Next slide. In 2014, the City of Cape Coral did some Yucca Pens ground truthing to update their surface water management plan. But this project will include extensive field observations of the seasonal high water level indicators in both Babcock Webb and Yucca Pens, approximately 50 locations, so we can get a thorough understanding of what areas of the project are above or below optimum hydro periods. Ground truthing will occur this wet season and the next dry season. And the field investigation data will be mapped and compared to topography, land use and land cover data, and recent aerial photography. Wetlands with reduced hydro periods will have wet season depths that are less than optimal depth ranges, dry season depths to the groundwater greater than the optimum depth ranges, indicators of hydrological stress, percent inundation less than optimal, and aerial wetland extent less than the 1953 coverage. Those optimal hydro periods are based on Mike Duver's 2003 study. Next slide, please. The most current integrated ground surface water model will be recalibrated at a minimum of 750-foot grid size with the new hydrological data. Other parameters that may be updated include channel roughness, saturated hydraulic connectivity, and soil parameters. Next slide. During the calibration, hydroperiod maps will be generated from model simulation files and will be compared to the hydroperiod maps created earlier after the completion of the ground truthing work. Next slide. The natural, aka pre-development water levels and hydroperiods will be estimated using the 1953 aerials. Current field mapping of the hydroperiod indicators combined with the measured groundwater elevations will be used to evaluate the difference between the existing and historical hydro patterns. And that information will be used as a guide for developing and modeling a minimum of 3 potential future condition scenarios to identify how well the scenarios will or will not achieve our goals. Some of the potential scenarios, examples are ATV ditch blocks to reduce drainage to the downstream waters, increased flow deliveries to the Yucca Pens from the future Bond Farm hydrological enhancement impoundment, as well as a climate change scenario. Modeling will also aid in determining if any of the scenarios have unintended consequences like flooding upstream or downstream. Next slide. The final report will include recommendations by comparing the predicted groundwater elevations and surface water levels and flows from the future condition scenarios modeled, and then demonstrate how each scenario will address our key initiative goals, such as sheet flow enhancement, reduction of peak flows and increasing base flow discharges to the estuarine waters, groundwater recharge, and enhancement of fish and wildlife habitat. Qualitative water quality benefits will also be described, and quick action projects for funding will be identified. For example, additional ATV ditch blocks. The CHNEP Technical Advisory Committee and the Charlotte Harbor Flatwood Initiative partners will review the work throughout the project, and all deliverables will be on the Charlotte Harbor Flatwood Initiative website. And with that, I will answer some questions. I do want to let you know that there is a lot of additional information if you visit the CHNEP Water Atlas Charlotte Harbor Flatwood Initiative website with the address shown here. On that site, you'll have an overview of the Charlotte Harbor Flatwoods Initiative. It contains previous studies, technical memos, and plans. All the deliverables for the Lower Charlotte Harbor Flatwoods Restoration Planning Project will be on the site, as well as the quarterly meeting notes from the Charlotte Harbor Flatwood Initiative meetings. All of our presentations from the past, including this one, will be on the site, and it has contact information. It includes my phone number and email, so if anybody wanted to be added to the email list for our quarterly meetings, you can contact me. And just so you're have the clear address on the proceedings on page 19, just remove the W from that email address, and that'll match the one that's on our website. Website also has links to water level data. Our next Charlotte Harbor Flatwood meeting is June 10th. And so with that, I'll take questions.
Great, thank you, Kim. Now we're going to turn over to Menti.com. For those of you joining us late, I want to just go through it really quickly, and we have lots of time for questions on this session, so we'll look for some more to come in here. Menti.com, MENTID.com. Go ahead and enter the code 639808. This is going to be listed at the top of your screen if you're joining us online. But anybody, whether you're on the phone or you're on YouTube, you can also use Menti.com right now to enter any questions you have for Kim, and she's going to answer as many as she can in the next 9 to 10 minutes. Thank you.
All right. Do more areas need to be acquired south of the project to restore flows south? As I spoke about, the Stolly Ranch is an opportunity. We've included it. This past year, both Stolly Ranch and the Charlotte 580 that I pointed out are now included in the Charlotte Harbor Flatwoods Florida Forever boundary. And we're looking at the Stolly Ranch as a great opportunity for additional storage to reduce the over inundation on Babcock Webb, but also to look at the data for getting additional flows to the south. With the Stolly Ranch, the flows from Stolly go to Prairie Pines Preserve, to Powell Creek. So it would be an important parcel for those flows to the south. Will there be any fish and wildlife studies with this restoration project? Not with this particular project, but we have the Fish and Wildlife Commission has been doing a lot of fishery studies over the years, and so we have that as baseline data. Let's see. Have there been any additional efforts to restore the ATV trails within the Yucca Pens Preserve to eliminate channelization of stormwater runoff? The two projects that were done in 2010 and 2013 have probably could use some enhancement, and that's something that we'll be looking at through this project. We also have several areas along the western boundary of the Charlotte Harbor Flatwood area that we assume some ditch blocks would enhance the hydro period of the Yucca Pens and hydro patterns of the Yucca Pens, but we'll know more as we get into at least a year into the study. Let's see, I cannot see the full answer. Are there opportunities for current ranch owners to obtain cost share? To obtain cost share and hold additional water on their lands, win-win. There are opportunities for ag owners, ranch owners to store water on their lands, and I would encourage anyone who is interested in that dispersed water to reach out to me. You know, the Stolly Ranch is one opportunity we're looking at, and the Charlotte 580 was ag lands. So any other additional ranches out there, please reach out to me for the project area. What did the past Babcock Webb studies tell us? Well, we know that we've got too much water on Webb, and we think we have about a foot over inundation during our wet season. And we know that the Yucca Pens hydro period is shorter than historically, but we've got a lot of data gaps. And so that's the reason we need the additional studies to, as well as the field work to verify the data that we've collected. Let's see here. Can you roll the screen up a little bit so I can see the top of those questions? All right. I doubt this question is fair for you to answer. Uh-oh. Do you think that your restoration is easier than a more urban area? What additional items do you need to be considered in a more urban area? What is becoming to be almost all of Lee County? Easier? Well, the fact that we have a large, we have the Babcock Webb and the Yucca Pens and Prairie Pines Preserve, that we have these large linkages does make it easier. We still need some vital pieces of the puzzle are missing, that Charlotte 580 or SLD and the Stolly Ranch. But what is always missing in the restoration is funding for acquisition, funding for studies. Is there anything we can do to help the Florida Forever land acquisition project? Well, we're in the Florida Forever boundary. We're waiting for the governor to approve the work plan that has added the Stolly Ranch and the Charlotte 580. And we had very good support. In the future, as we try to acquire any other lands, I would be reaching out, asking for individuals, to support, to send letters to Florida Forever for support. What we need right now is to get the work plan approved and then request that DEP pursue those lands for acquisition. So as you're talking with anybody at the Division of State Lands, you can discuss with them the importance of those properties. And as people have done in the past, continue to push to get Florida Forever fully funded. How will the modeling factor in the climate change impacts? Well, I'm not a modeler, so I can only give you, a basic answer on that. They'll look at different rainfall and ET rates, but that would be a question as we have our June 10th meeting. Roger Kopp and his team will be presenting on the Charlotte Harbor Flatwood Restoration Project, and they can probably answer some more technical questions in the modeling world.
All right, well, we have another minute or two for any further questions coming in, so we'll just wait and see if something doesn't pop up. But
thanks.
Sam,
I'll be excited to see.
I just wanted to say on behalf of the Coastal and Heartland National Estuary Partnership, we are very excited to be working with both water management districts. The Southwest Florida Water Management District has contributed funding as well as DEP and South Florida. So we are really excited. This is the very thing that the partnership exists to do, which is to facilitate these multi-jurisdictional, cross-jurisdictional projects, bringing all the partners together to get something that's been on the books as a proposed initiative for many years. We're finally getting it to fruition. So just want to express our gratitude and appreciation for working with you all on this.
Yeah, and CHNEP, you've been a great partner, and everybody, the question here, who will implement restoration projects? As I've said, we've got Lee County, Charlotte County, Southwest Florida Water Management District, South Florida Water Management District, Fish and Wildlife Commission, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We've got a lot of partners, so it will depend on the project and the location of the project, and as well as the funding of the project. And of course, all projects have to go to bid. CHNEP has been is implementing this study, and so we're hoping that they will continue to be able to assist the initiative with further project management of on the ground projects.
Well, great. Well, I think we are out of time, so we're going to have to move on. But again,